Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. I know usually I play music, but I don't want to do that today. Today we have a big amount of information to get out to people. Day 12, Story 12, as well as a new Sunday thing that myself and Tina are going to do called Common Talk. We're going to do that every Sunday evening. We're going to do that now for as long as it goes until we decide that that no longer is appealing, but I think it will catch on. It'll be appealing. This video I put up today, I know everybody needs a minute to log on, so I will give it that time. I see it's just starting to let people flow in now, but it's important to go through communism and absolutely the crown here in Canada. There are major misconceptions, incorrect uses of law. It's widespread. You see it all over, all groups, all around Canada. Some of these groups, including First Peoples, is a real issue for me. I see these groups don't have any credible legal experts other than what people think that they're going to interpret the legal system as. I've cried out. I've hosted World Constitution Day. It's coming up again for August. And it goes through a lot of what people need to know on constitutionalism, real constitutionalism. This video, it's going to go through communism as it's going through the world, what it is, what kind of system of governance that has become, a relatively new form of government, of how to govern people. There's an older system than communism, often highlighted by the colonials, which is monarchies, monarchical systems. They smell and feel a lot like communism, but they're not exactly the same, and it all depends on both uses of these forms of government that are not necessarily key to republicanism. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. A key difference being, is there a federalism or a unitarianism? That changes the whole narrative. The former Soviet Union, Russia, the United States of America, Switzerland, and there are others, are federalisms. Even Ethiopia, under civil war right now, basically a civil war of removing federalism in exchange for Unitarianism. That's how it looks to me, and it's what's described by so many, but you don't hear about it in the news because they're too black, too unimportant, apparently, in Western media. We're overshadowed by Ukraine, which is a much smaller conflict. Much smaller death toll numbers. But I guess that doesn't matter. Larger conflict, but wrong color skin, so we're not going to hear about it. Plus, it's the very minority group of federalism countries that's being usurped. So, of course, the media, especially the radical left, doesn't really want you to hear about it. It's got the African society as a whole, worldwide, whether it's Caribbean, American, South American, all those displaced former slaves up in arms, as well as 52 nations of the African Union. It's got them very upset. We see religious group leaders coming forward from all denominations crying out about it. The hypocrisy. Is it racist? I would say. Obviously, the news is about populism, not truth. Which brings me to this video, and it's very important for First Peoples of Canada, leaders going forward, because it's important for people to know that there are systems that have been tried, socialist ideas that have been tried and have only led to failure and some of the worst human rights atrocities when experimented with. I always tell people, get with constitutional experts, people who've devoted their entire life to constitutional studies. Yes, they are lawyers. Doesn't have to be Canadian Crown sworn lawyers you go to, because you'll find not very much action there. You find that most often the experts are outside of Canada, because Canada doesn't like constitutionalism, because when you look at Canada's constitution, you find it's grievous, it's wrong, very socialist, and it gives tremendous executive power to the governing elite. The people of Canada are not even in the Constitution. The First Peoples are definitely not in the Constitution. And then we have people like Russ DeBale. Whoa, wait a minute, Section 35, the Charter, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba, going on and on and on. This is a simple education this morning, folks, and I see people are starting to come on now. It's like this. Canada, legally, the legal system is a Consolidated Act, 1867-1982. You have a Bill of Rights, you have a 1982 Charter. And what does that represent in the Constitution of Canada, 1867 to 1982? Less than 1/3 of your Constitution is vested in those three documents. 2/3 before Russ DeBale's Section 35 outline Aboriginal rights and powers. Before that is 2/3 of the Constitution that is the legal how to govern of Canada's political system, both the federal government and the provinces. When you read that, it clearly tells you that the First Peoples are nothing. In fact, they're worse than nothing. They're less than a normal human being in many, many governing systems. Many. If you don't believe me, folks, Russ DeBale, and I gotta say it, I'm sorry, but when you pick parts of the Constitution and highlight them without analyzing the entirety of the Constitution, you don't just do a great disservice to yourself, you do a great disservice to every human being in Canada, Canadian second, third class, as well as all First Peoples. As I always say, the seated and unceded Indian, Métis, and absolutely Inuit. Seated, unceded, Indian. All the peoples, and all second-class merchant Canadians and all third-class. We're going to start with looking at Section 5 in the 1867. Their highlights, as I gave a presentation to the Alberta legislature almost over a month ago now, where we go through the call. This is Section 5, the V, the original one, that is consolidated, meaning legal practice today, calling for premiers to craft provincial constitutions that outline all the powers of Section 91. This removed from all the First Peoples in Canada, seated or unceded Indian, which is treaty or no treaty because of unceded status, as well as Inuit and Métis. You are not allowed any provincial constitutions because you've been removed, according to the 1867 Constitution, from any forms of any kind of Section 92 to 93 powers, none whatsoever. Education, property, health care, it goes on and on and on. The federal government says, listen, you will be unitary under us. This is problematic for your Section 35. It makes it a laughingstock. But before we highlight that, Russ DeBale, and it's not just the First Peoples, it's also all Canadians outside of Ontario and Quebec. Yes, that's correct. I said it. Ontario and Quebec have a special status with Lieutenant Governor. These are crown executive powers of the Prime Minister. When you go through section 35 that you like to talk about, Russ, there's the portion you hit in the subsections of 35 that amend the 1867 for all Indians that say the Prime Minister in unitary power will decide what provincial constitutional powers you get, thereby removing human status from Indians forever. Your great Pierre Elliott Trudeau basically stole all the federalism powers of provincial powers that should be bestowed on the First Peoples through that subsection. Read it. Go see Doctorates of Law. I highly recommend talking to my friend Richard Albert, but the reality is I have over 167 of the greatest legal constitutional minds in the entire world. Richard's a great highlight, a great starting point for me, not even truly the very first expert. I had one fly out from the United States post my election in 2019. He flew all the way to Edmonton, Alberta, met me at West Edmonton Mall with his wife, great expert. That's where it started with me. That's where it started with me. And I have only grown. I have so many from every nation of the world. I'm already over 150 nations out of 193. And if you think I don't have the United Kingdom, I do, folks. I've got many experts from the United Kingdom who have written and published much of all these things I talk about in my residential school stories. Lots of United Kingdom experts who've written about all these atrocities. Nothing I publish isn't true. But now let's get into communism and Canada's Consolidated Constitutional Act by Lewis and Holmes. This is what the government deems as law. This is how your government operates, whether any Canadian or first person likes it or not. This is the roadmap and blueprint of how the Canadian government operates, as well as the provincial governments. If you don't like it, tough shit, because they have the military, the police, and the justice system firmly in control, and anyone who steps out of how they govern, whether you like it or not, whether you say, I'm sovereign, or I'm not going to interpret it that way, I'm going to interpret it this way, it doesn't stop them from interpreting the Constitution as is written and as they deem fit. And if there's a discrepancy, it goes to the Supreme Court, or if it's under the province, it goes to that provincial Superior Court. And folks, if you haven't read the entirety of Section 5, the original Section 5, alive and well today, it gives you the Crown executive power of Lieutenant Governor, what they are to do and follow legally, the vested power of Lieutenant Governor, what they can do. It's largely ceremonial, except for all your property, your status as a human being in this country, and your justice system can be overridden by them. Largely ceremonial, don't worry about it. That's the first propaganda, which now brings me to what the bread and butter of this video is about, folks. This is about communism. A lot of people, we're turning commie. Let's look at the highest point of communism. Former Soviet Union, USSR. Let's talk about some real truths here. Free pharmacare. Oh yeah, that's an NDP liberal agenda. Free basic income. Let me tell you a story about where that has been experimented on in real history. I take us back to, often I've talked about it, the city of Chernobyl. Right now, Russia's occupying Chernobyl. They march their troops through there and da-da-da. Chernobyl, the newest age USSR, cutting edge at the time, stacked living. Nobody had houses. You're all in stacked apartment condo style. You don't have vehicles. Nobody drives, folks. 90% of the population, 95% of the population, 96% of the population, 97% of the population, 98% of the population, 99% of the population, 100% of the population, 200% of the population, 300% of the population, 400% of the population, 500% of the population, 600% of the population, 700% of the population, 800% of the population, 900% of the population, 1000% of the population, 2000% of the population, 3000% of the population, 4000% of the population, 5000% of the population, 6000% of the population, 7000% of the population, 8000% of the population, 9000% of the population, 100% of the population, 200% of the population, 300% of the population, 400% of the population, 500% of the population, 600% of the population, 700% of the population, 800% of the population, 900% of the population, 1000% of the population, 2000% of the population, 3000% of the population, 4000% of the population, 50 In Chernobyl, nobody drove except government sworn elites, those in the government of the communist regime. They all got vehicles, nobody else did. You could use state vehicles if you were working in that crown, but you had to have papers. No, you took a bus everywhere you go. You wanted to leave, you needed to take a bus out of Chernobyl and its surrounding area. You had to take a bus. You have to go through the government, get approval. It's have your papers. What is the business of your travel? You get assigned a job. Let's talk about guaranteed basic income, meaning everybody gets a living wage, no matter their education, their status. Sounds real good, right? Let me tell you the true side of it, published, credible, verifiable. So guaranteed basic income for all. Okay. You get to pursue your dreams. What do you love? I want to be a painter. Well, that's real great. Okay, everybody wants to be a painter, a singer, a songwriter, all these things. Great stuff. But who does all the dirty jobs? Who does all the toxic environment jobs? Because I promise you, working in the sewer is nobody's dream. I'm a welder. I've worked in some of the worst environments known to man. I'm not alone. There's lots of people who do that trade. People say, oh, they get paid too much money. Oh, but who climbs through the shit and piss to go weld ruptured pipes underground, wearing suits, getting stuff, contaminations? Who does the mining work so dangerous, the black lung disease, all of it, the claustrophobia, the poisoning of your system, the radiations, goes on, so many industries. Who does that work? If everyone is going to be paid the same and people have dreams, how is it that somebody dreams of doing those jobs? Nobody does. It's not even mainstream. They're not even talked about. Very sequestered. Always has been in the crown. Always has been in communism. Always has been in all socialist utopias. A real danger of the alt-left. Part of histories worldwide nobody ever talks about. How do you get people willingly, without being compensated, to do those jobs? Well, it's very simple, folks. It's called forced servitude, forced labor, forced indentureship. Well, how do you do that? It's very simple, folks. In Chernobyl time, in all over the Soviet Union, USSR, I have a dream. I want to be a songwriter. Oh, everybody's booing, throwing carrots at me. I'm not going to be the next opera singer. Sorry, it's my dream. But then the Communist Party comes to you and says, listen, Dave, you need to go and work in the mines. Oh, but I don't like the mines. I don't want to do that. I'd rather be a doorman at Walmart. We get paid the same, right? I think it's safer to be a Walmart greeter. I can give up my music career, but I want to be a Walmart greeter because I'll get the same wage as that mine worker. I don't want to do that. And then this is what they say. Oh, okay, well, here's a file. Boop. Pop it open. Dave, your mom's retired, right? Yeah. Well, you know that she's in assisted living and the government pays for that. And she gets guaranteed basic income. Hey, Dave, you know that mentally delayed child you have? Oh, look, those programs and the guaranteed basic income. Dave, if you don't go work in those mines, they're getting thrown off into the street. So you make a choice, Dave. Either you work for the same wage as the Walmart greeter because you're not equal. You have family that's unequal in services they use. And I mean, I'm just making all this up, folks. My mom's not in assisted living. I don't have a mentally delayed child. I'm just giving you factual reality of the entire history of all these socialisms when we get into free pharma, guaranteed basic income, and it goes on and on. Somebody has to be forced in that system to do the shit work. Nobody gives up their life force of their own free will for the love of the country. Yes, it's my dream to love my country and give my life in the shit and be miserable all day long with no financial reward, meaning I work 16 hours a day, come home filthy, covered in shit, piss, toxins, carcinogens, whatever. There are lots of ranges, folks. Nobody does that for the same wage as the doorman or the Walmart greeter. Or there's lots of narratives of people saying, whoa, there's a lot of jobs. If everything's paid the same, there are a lot of jobs I'd rather do than that. And then the government has to turn on you because they have to make you go and do it. And there's other ways of making you do it too. There's specific taxations. So in Chernobyl, bus stops, for those who didn't have vehicles, because if you're not one of the government's insiders, you don't get a vehicle. And again, unless it's assigned for work task, and you better do your work task because there's government people watching you. But the reality is, folks, the forced labor, those bus stops, you were assigned a bus stop, meaning the bus arrives to pick you up at a set time. You get assigned a bus number, taking you to your assigned job, where you will work the hours and schedules that are assigned to you. Not all were equal in the former Soviet Union. No. The forced labor, which was absolute, especially in all primary sectors, meant that some people sure worked 37.5 hours, big smile on their face. Those communists had a great life. But then there were all the citizen communists working 50, 60, 75 hours on shutdowns, bringing in the same weekly wage. But if they didn't do it, that primary sector portion of the population, if they didn't do it, who are largely represented by those who had family and ability to threaten. So if you were lucky and you didn't have old folks in your family or you're on your own, you probably would end up on the good side of communism. You'd love it. But if you didn't and there were bad luck situations within the family, you would be forced, or you would watch your loved ones go down the toilet. Bus schedules all set up around your job, where you go. Holidays, for a lot of people, sure, in that public sector, in those beautiful in-your-face jobs everybody sees. The dream being a cop, a policeman, all of that in the communist society, but nobody talks about the other jobs and how many people were forced into servitude, even being uprooted, transplanted from one region to another, forced to work. And if you weren't loyal to the government, you're definitely going there. If you had any speaking outs or this or that. This is what Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau promised to bring to Canada. And you guys, that Soviet forced labor was a staple of the United Kingdom. If you still are like Russ DeBeo and many other white or other narrative groups that talk about sovereignty and all these directions, like they know, they understand, hey, don't worry, follow us. Zero legal experts of any credibility or verifiability in the world, none whatsoever. These people just kind of make it up as they go. And I get it, a lot of people are trying to figure it out, but there comes a time when your comprehension, your education come into question, and that's the point where you say, hey, my name's Dave Bjorkman, I'm an economist, I graduated, I'm no legal expert, I require legal experts. I spent years going to get them, going through many, many seminaries, plenaries, many educational forums, even live. I met Richard Albert live in the Faculty of Law in Edmonton when Canada hosted Richard to come for a visit. We took off from there, and not just Richard. I got experts all over the world in so many countries. I would never go forward professing to be some kind of legal expert or try to go through the Canadian Constitution on my own and say, oh no, I know what this means. No, I use the best legal minds in the highest institutions in the entire world. Best of the best, bar none. And I omit many Canadian academics because unless they're operating outside of Canada and outside of the Crown problematic system of Canada, I'm not into them. Largely, there's maybe two institutions to a degree I'll work with. Other than that, I won't, because they're sworn an oath to the Crown. Go read your Section 5, folks. Never mind Section 35 of the new, less than a third edition of the Constitution, where in Section 35, Russ DeBeo, just under subsections, you've lost all federalism, which is supposed to be Canada for the First Peoples, and you give it to the Prime Minister, whomever that is. And if you think you're going to go to any lieutenant governor outside of Ontario and Quebec and get some help, never going to happen. And even if you go to Ontario and Quebec, they're still sworn to the oath of the Governor General. It's right there in Section 5. It's why I run a shadow crown. And folks, for everybody listening, why this video is so important, whether you're a Canadian citizen of every religion, every faith, or you're the First Peoples defined as unceded, ceded Indians, Métis and Inuit, bound by treaty or not, because you're unceded, or you don't have traditional treaties either from the British or from Canada through the Indian Act of 1876. All God, awful, horrific, as is Section 35, but it always was. The override is in 2/3 of the Constitution before it. Read the subsection again. Prime Minister has overwhelming control over all ability of any first person in Canada, all those groups I just stated, to ever develop any provincial powers. You were removed from all Section 92 to 93 overlaps. Removed from all of it. If that doesn't make the hairs on your neck stand up and make you terrified, I don't know what does. And if you don't believe me, there are many, many constitutional experts that will explain this to you. I suggest you go sit down and Zoom with them. Go watch Richard Albert's presentation on provincial constitutionalism. I've added the Canadian Indian in all of its differences. Ceded, unceded, Métis, and Inuit. All Canadian Indians in all their forms. All of them. All of them. Presentation just in the provincial side of constitutionalism. That's by a doctorate, the director of law of state of Texas for the U of Texas. Not a small man. Even Russia's used Richard Albert. I have Russian experts too. I'm probably the only North American who has that claim. The only one. I even have Ukrainian experts, even in this conflict, even with their narratives and what they want to believe, even in their Unitarianism I don't like. But we will highlight because everybody deserves to hear the whole works. And I couldn't articulate it for you. I couldn't, and I wouldn't. I would never write a constitution. I would never be that kind of person that would say, I have such a big ego and head, I could write a constitution for 40 million Canadians. Maybe I could do a good job, but the reality is I left out the 40 million Canadians. Can't do that. People have no idea what they're doing. It's clear, it's seen. I watch people, they talk, They'll hammer on me. They try to displace me. They'll steal a lot of the works I do, which I don't mind, but I hate it when the narrative's changed or it always leaves out the crown and the truth. Forced labor of communism is not a new concept. What the USSR did in Chernobyl is not new. That is basically all of Europe, because Soviet Union was Europe. It was just a new way of saying, hey, let's just make one class of people an elite first class. Let's do that. That was the highlight of communism. But then there's the inequality of so many. At that very bottom pyramid, they cut in half. Another divisionary tactic, just like Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh. Now, conservatives, to their credit, don't want that, but they sure love the crown dividing power, and they sure love taxation, whether they want to admit that or not. Carbon pricing, carbon tax, exact same thing. Don't be fooled, but so many are, because that's what you're institutionalized to believe, whether you're an Indian, seated, unseated, Métis, Inuit, brown, yellow, black, white, and everything in between and mixed. It doesn't matter, because it's all about class. Some of those colors can ascend to the first class. We see it right now. But they better be in love with the crown. They better accept 1867. More than 2/3 of how you're governed, rules of governance, and the power of the crown over all of you, removing any sovereignty, all of it taken, and even worse, even in our limited federalism, removing federalism completely from an entire group of peoples by race, color, and belief alone. Culture, society happens to be the first peoples of the country occupied, who have 0.2% of land of Canada, and are never, in that system, ever going to see any more. No matter how much kicking and stomping everybody does, no matter how many articles you write, Russ DeBale, that are factually incorrect, legally incorrect, according to the white man colonial law of 1867. No authority bestowed or any on any of you. Sorry, same as all Canadians outside of first class, where you see the appointments. Read section V, which is 5 in Roman numerals of 1867, consolidated with the very limited 1982. The real feel-good stuff that you try to highlight, Russ, you've ignored 2/3 of the Constitution that takes all of 1982, basically wipes your ass with it, and says, ooh, look at that. Right out of the toilet, that's going. Because if the executive power of that crown-empowered colonial class of citizenry, your politicians, and those they appoint or those sworn to them, don't want to follow it, clearly the first 2/3 of the Constitution tells you this. Tells you this at the end of the day. It all goes back to the crown, and who is the ultimate crown of domestic application of everything in Canada? Your Prime Minister, whomever we've all elected, often in less than 30% of society thinking and deeming that person to be a leader. Now they want past the post elections. Justin Trudeau released that. What the Conservatives use, which is all colonial. When you vote now, vote for who you think should be Prime Minister, and then a second and third, fourth, fifth place, whatever. And that way, if your first choice wasn't granted, then your second choice, if it won the popular vote, well, automatically your vote will transfer, and then it'll be a majority. What if I only want to vote for one person? Oh, well, then your ballot's spoiled, because you have to check every leader. I got nothing in common with Jagmeet Singh. I got nothing in common with Justin Trudeau. 12% of his policies are agreeable to me, about as much as communism itself, or of the former colonial crown system. 12% of their policies I agree with. That is hardly a check mark for any second or third place for me, folks. I don't know about you. But if you don't realize that conservative corruption system of the Conservative Party, all Crown-powered, is now going to be sought after and pushed forward in Parliament through Liberals and NDP. I don't know what to tell you. Get out of Canada. It's getting that bad. I don't know what to say. Why would I ever put a check? So basically my vote will be garbage if I refuse to place a placement for Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, or a Conservative, or anybody. What if I don't want any check mark for them? I grossly detest what they're representing and what they're campaigning for. But if I don't vote for them in a place structure system, my vote goes in the garbage. So now we're defining. So let's say I put Justin Trudeau as third place in my ballot check marks. Okay, I picked this guy, and Justin Trudeau's third place, right? There's two others before that because my primary votes for this one candidate. But they're highly unpopular. They only get 7.7% of the vote. Justin Trudeau gets 32, the highest. They'll say, well, you placed third place there, so now we're going to transform your vote to the most populous because yours didn't win at all. Your second place didn't even win. It was Justin Trudeau. Oh, third place, now your vote gets transferred to Justin Trudeau. So then all of a sudden, look, 82% of Canadians now voted for Justin Trudeau. That's not the truth. My vote has to go to Justin Trudeau because my first and second place didn't make it past the goalpost. They didn't get any kind of majority. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Smells a lot like unitary communism or civil law socialism. That's a creation of the Conservatives. The voting machines that Donald Trump says rigged his election, which is no proof. Nobody's ever brought any real proof. Zero exhibits to back that up. In fact, there's lawsuits. But regardless, I don't like it either, folks. I believe in the reality of showing up at a polling station in the physical person, showing your issued ID, turning it in, and doing my ballot in real person and real paper ballot counting. If you can't do that, you're not a real democratic society. Now, I understand there's people who are crippled up. There's people excuses why they can't go. Great. But if it's an excuse like the government likes, like we've made a whole bunch of citizens in Hong Kong, Canadian, who've never been to Canada, but they're now permanent residents, and we're going to give them the ability to vote, give them citizenship because they visited Canada, but they've never been here. They can't even speak English or French, really in any real way, but we've given them status because the UK demanded us to do it because our constitution says whatever they demand from us, international law, we must follow. So they do. So we give all these people who are not really Canadian, we're going to give them the vote to influence our elections. And of course, as long as they're getting all these freebies from you, the citizens who actually live and work here, while they're running a business overseas in another country, laughing all the way to the bank, getting loans insured by you, the taxpayer, and then they get the vote past the post. This is what Donald Trump was talking about. Again, there's no evidence, but I know the evidence of Canada. A conservative creation of Canada. It's Conservative Party of Canada created that. Liberals are involved in it too, over practicing in places like the United States. But Conservatives have been utilizing it forever. All Conservative elections, we all know the terror of the Conservative Party of Canada's electoral system for leadership. It's gross. It's disgusting. Provinces do it too. I was in the provincial election 2019. It was done in the province of Alberta too. It's been done all over major cities. All over major cities in Canada. All from the Conservative Party. A lot of it owned and operated by Liberals and Conservative elites. Administered in the USA, federally, not in Canada yet. But when will it be? When will everything come around and be a dictatorial system where it's not really truly what the vote is? Where third place check marks just so you can get your first place pick on the ballot, and statistics get warped. It's not real democracy. You're being told that, well, it was your third choice, Dave, so accept it. Accept that that's your majority leader now. With only 12% similarity in policies, that's going to be a majority now. Canada's done, you guys. If you don't see that communism that so many people gravitate to is exactly like the colonial system of old, which is what Canada is constitutionally. The same exact executive power of what everybody criticizes Vladimir Putin today is even more so that of Premier or Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet. They have even more power than Vladimir Putin today, even with his constitutional changes 2 years ago. Executively, Canada is much, much more powerful in federal powers through the Crown. Much, much more authoritarian, totalitarian than Russia is today. Even in a one-party system. We're supposed to be a federalism, but a lot of it's unitary. Again, all the First Peoples are trapped in Unitarianism. No division of powers of the provincial given to them. No ability to constitute anything without that subsection where the Prime Minister will decide Indians, Métis, and Inuit, seated, unseated. The Prime Minister will decide, not you. Not you. We're going to change that. We know how to change that. We know the legal path forward. Thanks, everybody. That's my video today. Later, it's going to be Common Talk with me and Tina. And then I'm going to do Day 12, Story 12 of Residential School Genocide. As well as, folks, we're going to talk about those who've chosen to go forward with residential school genocide, those First Peoples who are going to deliver the education. We're getting there. I have more people to contact back today. Today's the last day, but we've got a lot of response, and it's great. Those asked, those have answered. It's great. Thank you. That's my video. Stay tuned for more. Bye now.